Welcome to another episode of Over Underrated with Fran and Babs. This is Babs, and she has just found out that someone in her house has tested positive for COVID. Yay! So I'm finding solace in the podcast today and hope you do too. And thankfully today we're joined by a very interesting special guest, Adam Corner, who writes about climate change and music. Very interesting guy, and we get into some climate change and music chat right at the beginning. But he's not just here to talk about that. He's here to talk about Metallica as his overrated pick and Grandaddy as his underrated pick in the most flimsy link we've had to date, which is California Part 2. We hope you enjoy. I'll see you at the middle. See you at the end.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, what are we calling this podcast?
Was it over underrated?
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
Welcome to another episode of Over Underrated with Fran and Babs. Fran, you are looking very festive in your Zoom virtual background. How are you doing?
Yes, I have the Northern Lights and some Christmas entertainment because my bedroom's rubbish, so I thought I'd give the some eye candy. I've had a fun non-festive week. I should probably do some shopping soon.
Yeah, same. I did an urgent bit of Christmas shopping today, and that was it. And the rest of my family will have to wait. But we have someone else we can ask about their Christmas shopping on here today because we have a special guest, Adam Corner. Welcome, Adam, to the podcast. How are you?
Hello. I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, I haven't done very much Christmas shopping either, and I haven't got the Northern Lights as my background, or even like Marlborough Lights or anything like that.
Definitely festive, some Marlborough Lights. But
we usually ask each other what we've been listening to. So have you been listening to anything apart from the bands we're going to talk about today, Adam?
What have I been listening to? Well, I mean, it's end of year lists, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So I've been plowing through lots of different magazines end of year lists. The one I've got open on the tab at the moment is Dummy magazine. Yeah, so I was listening to some from their recommendations earlier on today. What did they have as number one? Little Sims.
Fantastic. I know Adam in a professional context rather than a podcasting context. Not that, obviously I'm not a professional podcaster. Adam writes and does research on climate communication and culture. And I was wondering if you could talk a bit about that, Adam, about like the intersection of those and how you see kind of culture helping people act on climate change, or what are you working on at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we know each other from, I guess it's like 10 or so years ago, probably, isn't it? Doing a little bit of work together on climate change communication, working on a report together. And that was for an organisation called Climate Outreach that I used to work for until recently. But I've this year gone freelance, gone independent, which has been good and enjoyable so far, he says, after less than a year doing it. Yeah, and I guess like what I'm now focusing on work-wise is still sort of public engagement with climate change and working with different clients and partners, often charities, to sort of support their work campaigning or doing, trying to engage different audiences on climate change. But the way that I've set up the work that I'm doing myself now is, as you say, to sort of try and branch out a little bit, I guess, into the sort of cultural space broadly as well, and think about how music in particular can contribute to, I suppose, catalyzing people's sort of concern or engagement with climate change. What's the soundtrack for our climate crisis, but also I guess from the industry side, I'm just interested in how the music industry responds to climate change as well. So yeah, I've alongside the climate work, which we know each other through, I've written about music for quite some time, for various different places, quite often for Cracked magazine, doing some features, doing some live reviews, some album reviews, and recently I've been writing a bit about music and climate change together.
That's really good, because I have not found a way to that diagram. I think this conversation with you on this podcast is the closest that I've come to that.
We're climbing in now.
climbing in and loving it. Yeah, when I was talking to Fran about what you did, we started talking about,
what do we think about when we think about music and climate change? And Fran, I think you mentioned Coldplay, you know, touring conscientiously. I thought of Radiohead and Massive Attack. I have been besieged by Instagram adverts for No Music on a Dead Planet recently as well. But yeah, are those the kind of projects that you're working on, or, you know, something else as well?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess like so far the writing, the sort of more journalistic writing that I've done about the music climate intersection has been, well, initially sort of going waving a flag and going, hello, is anyone thinking about this stuff, because it feels like we should be, and then I guess more recently chronicling a little bit some of the progress that has been made, and they're good examples. Yeah, and I think the Music Declares Emergency group, you know, are managing to create a bit of a buzz. And also just, I think, festival promoters, live promoters are thinking about, you know, not only what's on site and what they can do that's within their own control, but also like how do audiences travel to events, and how can they work with sort of, you know, all the surrounding infrastructure around a big live event to make that more sustainable and more possible, because in some ways it's the biggest uncertainty, I think, in terms of carbon emissions, is like how do the thousands of people that come to a big event get there, is kind of actually, you know, outweighs how does the bands that are playing or the DJs that are playing get there. Although I did have worked with a group called Clean Scene, who had a report out earlier in the year called Last Night a DJ Took a Flight, which I liked.
Very nice.
And
nice.
they'd done some good data number crunching, and they'd worked out how the sort of top 100 DJs on Resident Advisor, where they've been and where they've been playing according to their list of, you know, engagements and gigs. And they, you know, the big ones fly all over the place every week in normal times, fly, you know, 3 or 4 times a weekend around Europe, all over the world sometimes. And so it's not about shaming people, like it isn't about shaming anyone about anything, but there's a question in there somewhere, like, hang on, have we definitely got this right? Have we definitely set this up in the right way? Is there another way to go about this?
I read an article. I saw a tweet today which said that I think it might be the University of Amsterdam has just mandated that if train travel takes less than 6 hours, they're not going to reimburse a professional flight, which I thought was quite an interesting tactic of kind of getting around that personal choice and otherwise.
Yeah, incentivizing it. I mean, I think like the French government's done something similar as well, about like if there's a 4-hour radius or something, you know, not I don't know. I think it wasn't about banning flights, but it was sort of not incentivizing them, basically.
In the UK, like some of our biggest festivals like Glastonbury are dreadful because obviously you can't get there by train or bus. You basically have to drive there. Is that one of the issues? Is that we need to have festivals that's in better situations for public transport? It's
more straightforward to tackle that when you're not setting up a city in the middle of a field that doesn't have a city's infrastructure, for sure. Because if you're in a good contemporary city, it should already be doing a lot of these things which are helping with then whatever kind of event it is, you know, just decarbonizing our urban spaces in all the ways that we need to. But I wonder whether, I don't know, I mean there's a reason why I think it remains like a real challenge for festival promoters and for live event promoters, is to deal with that aspect of things, because it's kind of a bit beyond their control. But also I think it involves working with the, you know, whatever it would be, bus companies, train companies. I mean, yeah, you're right, Glastonbury's not right next to a station, but I guess it's a kind of culture shift a bit, I suppose, about away from what we assume is the model of going to these live events where you take, you know, like half of your house with you in a car, versus, I don't know, what could be there already that people could use but without costing people loads of money. I don't know, some of the stuff is not easy, but it feels like it kind of does have to shift. It's certainly a small thing, but on the other hand, I think it's a small thing in the big scheme of things. But I think that music and culture has this outsized influence, you know, on other aspects of our lives. So it's kind of matters, I think, you know, symbolically how people go about things in that context.
I mean, I don't know if the UK does this, and I mean, I live in Belgium, which is a much smaller and more densely populated country, but Belgium is very good at a shuttle bus. It's very good at, even if you've got something in a field in the middle of nowhere, there will be shuttle buses taking you from the main station that are free. and therefore, it makes your life much easier. So I've definitely been to festivals, which it can be a bit annoying, when you go to Werchter, you have to basically walk for 40 minutes. What doesn't matter if you're coming by car or bus or whatever, it's a big venue, but it definitely will impact on the carbon footprint, I think. And yeah, Fran, I was going to ask you, as someone who goes to festivals and gigs more regularly, do you think, have you seen more language geared towards sustainability or not so much? Someone not working in the field, yeah.
To be honest, not the ones that I tend to go to. There are shuttle buses, but then I guess it's convenience. Like the shuttle bus will be sometimes an hour after the last band, and then you've got to go on a slow bus ride another half an hour somewhere. So I guess people may be put off by it in some ways. But yeah, I mean, Camp Festival is what I go to. That's nowhere near a train or bus. So I mean, I've always sadly driven. Victorious is being dead centre of Portsmouth. I got a train to. So like Adam said, it's all down to where the festival is. Camp Festival aren't going to suddenly be able to be in the centre of Bournemouth. That's where they are. I doubt they can change their location. I don't know how easy it is for them to change their location, but at the moment, I haven't seen any public transport or any coaches or anything at all, really.
I guess, yeah, if you make it very difficult for you to access your car at the end of the evening, like that's one way of doing it. But listen, we're not here to try and solve all the problems. We're here to talk about Adam's picks today, because the theme is California once again. So we've done a part 1, this is part 2, and Adam has picked a band that he thinks is overrated and a band that he thinks is underrated in that theme. So Adam, let's start with our overrated pick. Who are we talking about today?
Overrated.
Okay, so we're going to talk about a band called Metallica.
I'm sorry, who? I've never.
Yeah, no, I don't know. You might not have heard of them actually. They're quite underground.
Fran, do you know them? Yeah.
I've heard like 1 or 2 songs, maybe.
Yeah, 1 or 2 songs.
I thought like, if you're gonna participate in a conversation about overrated and underrated, why not sort of like just aim sort of stupidly and overconfidently for the top. Just to make a complete fool of yourself. So I absolutely do not hate Metallica at all, and I'm not here to say they've got no merit, and that would be ridiculous. I guess I just don't. Is in a way I'm trying to tap into the pure spirit of this, I think, and say like I just don't see why they're kind of on top of the pile in the way that they are, why they quite have that huge sort of status gap, it feels, between sort of them and almost everyone else in their genre. And I guess, I also don't want to pretend that I've listened hundreds of times to every one of their many albums. They've got a massive catalogue. But I mean, I know I've been doing some research for the purposes of this conversation and making sure that I wasn't missing anything crucial from the early days.
Thank you.
When it was a bit more kind of thrash metal and speed metal, and it was all had a lot more energy, I think, a bit more vitality. I maybe we can kind of come to this, but there's various points that I feel like I've intersected with their music in my life, and definitely at all of those points I didn't feel like it had much vitality or energy, but somehow they just seem, there's a lot of po-faced seriousness going on, and it feels like, I don't know, to me metal is sort of inherently kind of a bit daft and a bit over the top and a bit fun, and it's somehow, if you don't have that, I'm not so convinced. And I did like, I used to read, the very first magazine I used to read was Metal Hammer when I was a kid. And so this is like early 90s basically, and so I sort of had a chance to like them, but I didn't. I got into grunge, not metal.
There we go, good introduction. So Fran, what's your relationship with Metallica?
So yeah, I mean, I was in the early 90s, I remember MTV obviously having Enter Sandman on constantly, and that's the first thing I remember. Like, I don't know any of the songs from the 80s, and I think, weren't they quite proud of not having singles for a long time, or having music videos? Like, I think the Black Album was like where they first went mainstream, actually having music videos, and that's when I first discovered them.
Yeah,
and I believe that's their more radio friendly sound. Like Adam said, they were like a thrash metal band like with like Slayer and Anthrax, which isn't really my scene, so I doubt I'd ever listen to the early music. And then I just occasionally they would appear with a new video, sometimes terrible, sometimes listenable, and then I watched Some Kind of Monster and enjoyed that car crash. And I probably have not heard anything in the past 20 years of Merit.
Wow. I was going to ask about Some Kind of Monster because it's one of those documentaries that everyone talks about as a seminal documentary. I've not watched it, I think in part just because I'm not that big a Metallica fan, but does it matter? Do you have to be a Metallica fan to like it? No, it's enjoyable.
Oh no, I've always wanted to meet a hardcore Metallica fan to ask them how they feel about it, because if that was my favorite band, it would be heartbreaking.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really cringeworthy, and like they keep cutting to the bassist, and and he's like gone down an indie direction, and how happy he seems to be out of Metallica, and they seem quite jealous that he's not in Metallica. Like
right.
he's now cooler than they are. So yeah, it's really interesting. I definitely give it a watch. Yeah. So my relationship with Metallica is a mostly indifferent one, although it did, speaking about Vector, solidify into hatred for a little bit, because I think I've talked about this before, but I need to talk about this again when talking about Metallica. I went to Vector in 2006 and Faithless were the headliners at like midnight. But before that, Metallica played a 2.5-hour set. And it was the fourth day of the festival, and the dynamic of having Metallica there completely changed, because suddenly you had all these metalheads with Metallica t-shirts and you're like, what's going on here? And I think because there was nothing else on, me and my friend Lieselotte basically had to sit through Metallica. And just my memory of it is they were on this incredibly high stage. So it was like they were so far away from the audience, like they were gods, but I didn't believe it at all. And it was just guitar solo, guitar solo, guitar solo, with nothing else. And I was just like, can we please just end this and get to Faithless? So I think, apart from Enter Sandman and another song that Adam's picked, I really didn't know anything. And that experience for me just made me be like, this is not for me. I'm not so much into metal. And I've now watched them live, tried to have an open mind at the beginning, but it didn't work. But I have to say, I came into this being like, maybe Adam's going to change my mind. And I wanted to ask Adam, because the songs that you picked are from basically two of their albums from the 90s. So you said that you intersected with them at different times, but were the 90s a particularly fraught time for you? Is that why you picked these songs, or did you pick these songs because they were the best one? Then what was your process?
No, it was more trying to find like some points where I felt like I'd interacted with the music, or there'd been a sort of an awareness of what they were doing. And I guess because they've got like a huge back catalogue, and I think if you want to come in all confident saying, this band's not all that everyone makes them out to be, I feel like you should at least try to listen to most of their material before you definitely say that.
Mm-hmm. And we definitely do that.
And I kind of know that. Of course that's the starting point for all these conversations. But I diligently listened through like all the early stuff, which in a way I kind of knew that I do like more, because it is just a bit more raucous. And actually I'm not a huge metal fan at all, but I did used to listen to a bit of stuff like Slayer and Megadeth and all those kinds of bands at the beginning, around the same kind of time. And like, I don't know, it probably got it moved into more like Queens of the Stone Age and sort of like Nine Inch Nails kind of bands after that, and whatever comes after that. I guess like really most of the stuff that I listened to in the last 15 years is more electronic and dance music really than bands anyway. But I just feel like they've got this kind of, somehow they've achieved this sort of status that it's like, they sort of took metal out of its embarrassing stage and into some more like taking it seriously stage. It's like, hang on, did they, or is it worse? Because like, it seems like there's a lot of Spinal Tap stuff going on about taking themselves too seriously. And like they did, they were definitely like, if you think of bands with orchestras, disasters, like I feel like that's the association in my mind, is the sort of like, let's put a load of strings on top of it, is Metallica. And they also didn't they? Well, they did, because I looked at it, but I remember that they sort of they were one of the bands that like sued Napster when Napster was sort of And I know there's loads in that. It's not like, let everyone have music for free.
But
Like,
that really
there's loads
backfired.
going on.
They really got ridiculed for that eventually. Yeah.
But somehow I don't know. Like, I think there is, on the one hand, there's a lot of ridicule and a lot of people that are willing to just sort of laugh really a bit at the sort of taking themselves too seriously aspect of them. But also they really, really are like enormous and massive in terms of numbers and in terms of the impact that you still, if you read recent, which I again did for this conversation, like relatively recent sort of takes on like who are the most important bands in metal, it's like they just get a total, seemingly like a free pass on this stuff. So
yeah, I think the fact they're called Metallica as well, which makes it sound like the essence of metal, doesn't help actually. You know, on numbers, Adam, I always like to look at Spotify listeners. So they have 17.3 million monthly listeners. And I think one thing that's always really intrigued me, and maybe you can answer this, Fran, or maybe Adam as well, is the fact, why is Lars Ulrich so well known? I feel like I know Lars Ulrich more than James Hetfield. I'd forgotten, and he's the vocalist. Is that part of the draw, that it's this real kind of like team of these two guys who met ages ago and got together? Is the mythology kind of continuing that?
I guess he's the most charismatic member, isn't he? Like, he's always the one who's happy to be out there. He's the mouthpiece. It also, like, I think him and James wrote all the songs. Like, when I'm looking at this research, I was surprised that it's always those two. Like, even like Kurt doesn't even write some of the bigger songs.
That's what I would have thought. Yeah.
Yeah. You think both guitarists should be the main songwriters, not the drummer. But he seems to be a massive songwriter. I think he's worth like 300 million, which is insane. And I think he earns more than like Roger Taylor. I think he's most richest drummer in the world. There you go.
Wow.
Well, he's so yeah. Like, I think there's the dynamic is that he's sort of like aggressively sort of ambitious and, you know, pushed everything forwards and was really, really sort of co-leading from the back of the stage, from the back of the band, in a way that doesn't happen very often, which I think is interesting. And I guess like with a band like, you know, they're a legacy band now, very much so, and I don't know, you know, those Spotify figures, I guess, are not that like exceptional in the context of sort of contemporary acts, but I reckon the fact they're routinely getting that number of listeners now, the fact that they've got their discography is, you know, was back when everyone bought hundreds of thousands of albums. You know, they were up there, weren't they, with in that kind of golden / overcooked era of 80s 90s album sales. And I've got there's a little twist to this as well that we'll get to that bit.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well then, do you want to take us through your first pick, Adam? What's the first song that you've chosen on the overrated list?
Fuel. That's the first song. I sort of chose it because actually I quite like it. I think it's got it's kind of got, it seems a bit more, it's got that kind of fun energy. It's not as heavy as their early stuff, but it's from the period that I was conscious of and had, until recently for this conversation, had some like current opinion about. And it's kind of like, it's got that sort of energy from their early days, I think. Maybe not massively representative, but also it's got that sort of syncopated, like sort of Chili Peppers funk sort of rhythm to it as well, that I think somehow works quite well, and I quite enjoyed it. In reviewing their, trying to give a fair appraisal, I actually thought this was quite a good one.
Yeah, I love this. I would have not thought this was Metallica at all. I think I hadn't realized that they'd started as thrash metal. I think because I only know their more radio friendly songs, I was like, oh, if it was a bit more like this, I would definitely get more on board. And it was more minimalist than I expected. As you said, you know, Metallica, you expect kind of bombast and strings, but this is just vocals, drums, bass, guitar, and give me fuel, give me fire, give me that which I desire. It's really catchy. So okay, good to hear that you agree. But Fran, do you?
No. This is what I would call macho metal. I just hate the way he sings. It's too.
Oh, his voice is terrible.
Too like, I am in Metallica. Come on, give me fire, give me fuel, give me another guitar solo. We need 5. Come on, guys. And that's what instantly puts me off. Like, I like Guns N' Roses funny. Because at the same time in 1992, you've got Guns N' Roses and Metallica were the two biggest like rock bands on MTV and everything, and Guns N' Roses seemed to have a good time. I wanted to be in Guns N' Roses. I never wanted to be in Metallica. That's the way I see it. I don't like this. Lyrically, it's like he's written down petrol and saying any word he can get, like petrol, gas, fire, like literally power. Oh, but I've got another one. It's like, oh dear. No.
I think it's very of its time, like, well, actually, in a way, after its time, because I knew that one album was from 97, one album was from 91. And I was like, oh, I presume this one is from the 91 album. And then I was like, oh no, okay, this is 97. Later. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's very funny. I think I do get what you mean about macho metal, but it didn't bother me here. I think just because because the opening line was so catchy, I was like, all right, James, you've got me on this one. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fair point about like the macho aesthetics of the song. I mean, completely, totally. I wonder how different that it actually is to. I mean, I also totally agree on the more fun point in Guns N' Roses, but I reckon if we're going to go down the like toxic masculinity route, I reckon Axl Rose has got some questions to answer here as well, for sure. I mean, this is the get in the ring guy. Like, what was that song all about? It was like a long breakdown of a song, mental breakdown of a song.
Yeah, Axl Rose was a very bizarre man during his time.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, I really, Guns N' Roses, I think we need to do them in a future episode, because I was never into them, and I do feel like they're the kind of band that they have unusual fans. Like, it isn't just people who are into metal or rock, at all. And I'm like, but why? I don't get it, because I just see Axl Rose being a maniac, and the misty wind of the November Rain video, and just what the hell's going on. Like, I don't get it. So yeah.
I think they're more of a cartoon band, because the way that Slash looked, the way they had nicknames. I guess they were more of a cartoon, like pantomime band,
like camp almost.
Yeah, Metallica. We mean it. We wear black. We are Metallica.
Right.
Fear us, Yeah. Like Adam said, they don't seem to have any sort of sense of humor at all about them, as if you can't have.
Well, and I think the next pick really demonstrates that.
This is the one, isn't it? This is the no sense of humor.
Oh yeah. So yeah, what's your second song, Adam?
Right, The Unforgiven. Which is a turgid, plodding run through of absolutely overcooked, sort of like non-sentiment, as far as I can tell, and goes on forever, as does End Sandman. But the Unforgiven, I used to play in a band when I was a kid, and sort of did it like, I mean, not that we weren't international superstars, but we did it quite seriously for quite a while. Like, played in our sort of area and played in pubs every weekend and did gigs and wherever. But from really young, like sort of like 10 or 11, we started playing, and then started to get gigs, after that, and then played all through our teens until we were like 17 or 18. So it all happened weirdly young. And we did a couple of things. This wasn't mostly what we were doing, but we did a couple of things that were basically like battle of the bands sort of competitions that were being run in various places. And there was a band called The Unforgiven, who were a Metallica covers band, and full grown adults. And we beat them and won the Battle of the Bands competition. And they seemed to have also absorbed Metallica's like sort of taking themselves seriously, po-faced vibe as well. So it was just the funniest thing, and obviously we just like rinsed them amongst ourselves, and that kept us going for anecdotes for like years afterwards.
Sounds like real life School of Rock that you did. That's incredible.
Did they retire after that concert?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
So I didn't know this song either, and when it started, I was like, oh, are they trying to make this their Battle of Evermore? And I was like, oh, I think they are, and I think they failed quite miserably, because I think it wants to be a power ballad, but it's not a power ballad. It's got rock elements. The James Hetfield's voice, he goes, never may, a lot, and I'm like, it's like Justin Timberlake, when he says it's going to be May. That's all it made me think of as well, which I'm sure that's not what James Hetfield wants. And I didn't watch the video, but I read the description of what the video is, and that was enough for me to assign this to the bin, basically.
Yeah, I put down, is this their version of Blaze of Glory? It's like their Western theme tune, but this time I choose Bon Jovi over Metallica.
Me too.
This is actually a trilogy. They've got 3 Unforgivens.
They get worse.
Oh, God.
And as Bab said, like if I ever have to do like a bloke impression, that is basically his voice. Like, hi, I am a guy. Hi. But I will say that he does have a more melodic version. Like, I think there's a second section of the song, and he sounds pretty decent. Like, he can sing in a more melodic way, so I don't know why he has to rely on that. But as a bassist, I couldn't hear any bass at all in this track.
I mean, I wasn't paying attention. I was just too busy going, "This is awful," and then looking at the lyrics.
Wacka guitar, and no bass.
Lots of double tracked kind of like chorus guitars.
Because I think I read about it, the one or the other one, where it was like, we're kind of consciously trying to do kind of something a bit slower, and I'm like, I don't know, you can tell, like it's one of those, it doesn't feel sincere, it doesn't feel like it comes from like one of your later picks. I'm like, I can believe in that. I do not believe in this at all, and definitely so far it's like if I had to pick a parody Metallica song, this would be it. But the next one, I think maybe a bit more nuanced discussion. I don't know. What's your third pick, Adam?
Actually, no nuance from me on this. I just like, it's obviously one of their like absolutely biggest hits. I think it's really boring. It's really famous. The riff is so famous, but I just can't get into it or enjoy it after more than about 15 seconds. But there's loads more than 15 seconds to this song, which always disappoints me whenever I hear it. And I kind of go out and make a cup of tea, come back in, and right, okay, come on, and still go in. So for me, actually, this is just the sort of epicenter of the so boring. I think it doesn't have any life to it from what I can see. But at least it doesn't have castanets in it, which I think The Unforgiven does.
Fran?
Yeah, I have nothing really bad to say about Enter Sandman. It's just one of those classic songs that exists, and you go, oh yeah, that's the Enter Sandman, that's the riff I know. And then, I probably turn over because I probably heard it a billion times. I'll never get out of my way to listen to this song. It just exists. I don't hate it. I think the guitar riff is pretty decent. It's got a decent chorus.
See, this is the thing. I actually really like this song, but I don't think I've been hit over the head with it as much as maybe you have, the both of you have, because Fran, you mentioned that it was on MTV all the time.
All the time.
I would think because I'm younger, I didn't pass to that. So it definitely is a song where I agree that, it's Enter Sandman, but I really like it. I like the way it builds. I like the riff. His voice doesn't annoy me here, and the guitar solo doesn't annoy me, especially because the guitar solo is going on, the instruments are kind of supporting it, and then it leads into that praying section, which I think is quite original. So it feels like a story in a way that many other Metallica songs don't. And the fact that it's about children's nightmares, I actually think it's quite an original topic.
So this album became massive, right? So is there some Metallica fans who hate Metallica from this moment onwards? Because I guess this isn't metal, this is more rock. I wonder if there's a divide in like Metallica 80s fans to Metallica 90s fans. Like, I wonder if many left them behind. Like, how I guess some people don't like YouTube from the 90s onwards. Some people don't like Simple Minds from 1985 onwards. I wonder if this made a massive divide between the hardcore Metallica fans and the ones who listen into the radio songs.
I think it would surprise me if it didn't, right? Because but the thing is, I don't really know what later Metallica sounds like. What does post-90s Metallica sound like? Much of a sameness or not?
I've heard Sent Anger, because that's what the documentary is about, and that's just pretty stuff down. It's not thrash metal. It's I think the albums we talk about, Load and Reload, I think that seems to be as heavy as they get going forward.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever gone back to the original days, which are kind of punk. I mean, it's not punk, but it's got that it's punkier energy, it's thrashy. I'm intrigued now by the Simple Minds camps, which I feel like I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, who's going to win this fight? Simple Minds or Simpler Minds?
Yeah, I think there's good people on both sides of that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what I can agree with you on, it is very overplayed. And I think it goes back to what Adam says of yes, it's a catchy rock song, but there are other catchy rock songs. So why did this one break through? Why did this one permeate over many others. I don't know. Was it the music video? I remembered it. Like, I haven't seen it in God knows how long, but I was like, yeah, it's the one with the children in the bed. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly it. So is it the whole package that made them appealing? I don't know. But what I think perhaps didn't make them so appealing is your next pick, Adam.
And part of me wants to say that it's like a weird genius kind of song, like or the Marianne Faithfull bit is a weird genius kind of thing. I can't quite work out whether I really like hearing it or whether I can't stand hearing it, but it's just like this kind of ghostly coda that comes into the song every now and again and at the end. But I mean, it's not. No, I think I'm settling on it's not. It's not good.
So this is The Memory Remains, which I didn't know before. And when I saw it had Marianne Faithfull, I was like, oh, that's an intriguing person. And I wonder what she's going to do here. And the answer is not very much, apart from some creepy la-da-da.
Gurgle. A gurgle. Like she's like unconscious.
She's like a bizarre ghost, bizarre older ghost. And like you, so I had to listen to this a couple of times to figure out what I thought about it. Yeah, I think I enjoy it. But I'm still not 100% sure. I quite like the kind of fake ending as well that happens where you think it's over and it's not. And nope, she comes back. And when you look at the lyrics and you see that it's about a fading prima donna, and then you have, Marianne Faithfull in the 90s, I was like, well, that's quite brave. Quite brave of her to come on and do that. So I think that kind of elevated my at least respect for her and respect for the song. But yeah, I didn't hate it as much as Unforgiven, but I don't know. I what is this? I don't know. Fran, what is this? Any ideas?
Yeah, I've always baffled like how Metallica and Marianne Faithfull were ever linked. Like, how did they discover her? It doesn't seem to be in the same at all, in the same stratosphere. And what was the conversation? Hi, Marianne, we're so happy to see you. We love you, but can you not actually sing? Just wanted to do some weird sound.
Yeah, can you just be like zombie Marianne Faithfull?
Okay. Like Bab said, it's not all terrible. I like the button guitars. It's got some decent elements, but it's a baffling track, and then it has some sort of Wayne's rolled guitar near the end that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah,
just honestly, the flashbacks, the fact that every single bloody song needs a guitar solo. I'm like, guys, you don't need this. Like, you don't need this every single time. And yeah, here I don't think it does anything.
There's a bit in some kind of Monster when they literally spend ages discussing whether songs need guitar solos or not anymore.
Oh, I need to watch this documentary. Because the thing is, okay, I do think that people being like, oh, metal's only guitar solos is a bit reductive. But at the same time, totally. At the same time, when you listen to a playlist like this, you're like, do you know what? I think when it feels like it's hammered in, we did an episode, Adam, on Skid Row versus Bon Jovi, and with Skid Row, it's like definitely there are songs with good guitar solos and songs without, but they don't. It's always in the middle. It's like there's a verse, there's a chorus, there's a guitar solo, there's an ending, and so that's so predictable. There's other ways of doing this.
It's interesting because I honestly, I guess, like, thought that there was going to be a bit more of a battle to be won about sort of criticizing Metallica, because it feels like although obviously it's easy to laugh and poke fun and sort of see all the things that are a bit ridiculous about them, they're also, the impression you always get is like, oh no, they're a good one, they're a solid one. But I don't know, maybe not. Maybe we're all just,
I think with us
just tricking each other.
I think me and metal, I quite like sort of sludge metal, stoner metal, slow, heavy guitars, but slow.
Doomy stuff.
Yeah, doomy stuff. I don't mind a bit of Megadeth every now and again, and I think there's probably more in that world that I'm willing to explore. But I think, I think your playlist, we're finishing it soon. It has changed my opinion perhaps a little bit of Metallica, and I think I hadn't, because I thought they were this big rock band. I'd never considered their lyrics, but actually, so far, the songs they've all been on completely different themes, and they're not just about like being angry or I love that woman or I hate that woman. That's good. I think that's interesting that at least they're trying to come at it from a different angle. But I think without knowing their full studio albums, that was my impression. And we only have 5 tracks to change my mind, and you maybe have a bit, but not enough. But Fran, I think you've listened probably to more Metallica. It doesn't seem to have changed.
Yeah, I mean,
much of your opinion
I think
either.
the 2 Metallica songs I actually like the best probably the least Metallica songs out there. So there's Hero of a Day, which I think is on Load, which again is kind of a completely non-metal track with some really, really beautiful arpeggio guitar on it and great. And I think the song for Mission Impossible 2, I Disappear, was
that was
nearly
put that on.
I at that time, working in a cinema, I heard it a lot, and I quite liked it. So there you go. So, but I don't think there are two songs that most Metallica fans would ever say were in the top 20 singles. Say.
And speaking of standard Metallica, so what's your final track from the playlist, Adam?
So this is time for a little twist and a little sort of like diversion into not that we're not having a serious conversation, but like a little bit more serious conversation. Very serious, exactly. So I've actually been to see Metallica at Wembley in 2000 sometime, and actually met James Hetfield backstage.
What a bomb to drop at the end there, Adam. Love it. What a twist!
Just the backstage meeting bomb to drop at the end. So basically, my ex-partner, my partner at the time, was a carer for her younger brother, who was called Frankie, and he had muscular dystrophy, which is a terminal illness, and he sadly died young when he was 19, and loved him very much. Just as a long time ago now, like 10 years ago or something. But we used to do. He loved Metallica. So I actually had a bit of I felt quite uneasy about like saying they were overrated, because like I just felt like I was doing him wrong, but also felt like I was just gonna give it a fair hearing and be like, these are the songs that I like and these are the ones that I don't like as much. He really loved the song, and he loved the band as well. And I felt like actually like he did sort of show me real point. He did actually show me like how much people are impacted by their music. So although I don't get it and I don't particularly rate it, like I really could see like through his eyes, he just like loved all this stuff. And I think Nothing Else Matters it definitely is like a step above the Unforgiven stuff. You know, like I feel like it's a bit more of a considered song. And although it didn't persuade me, even though I had ample chance again to get into them through all my time with Frankie enjoying them. If it was good enough for him, they're good enough for me ultimately. So I thought I'd end on a twist, a serious twist.
Brilliant, bringing storytelling to our podcast in a way that we haven't done. So thank you, Adam. But how was it? I mean, because someone like Wembley, I'm guessing not too dissimilar to my experience, where I was at a festival, but I really felt like I was surrounded by hardcore Metallica fans, and I still didn't quite get it.
Yeah.
Did you at least pick up on something? I mean, if you got to meet them afterwards, did you pick up on something? Was there?
Yeah, I mean, I all I could. This is the weird thing. It's like, interestingly, I still didn't get it like firsthand. I was like, this is when I definitely should get it if I'm going to get it, and I'm not getting it. So I felt comfortable with my conclusion that I wasn't into it.
Yeah, I really like Nothing Else Matters. I said this is their actual Battle of Evermore, and I think it's one of those songs that I don't know that well. So when I think about it, all I think about is him going, "Nothing else matters." But it's a proper epic. It does tug at the heartstrings a little bit.
I think so.
There's some nice harmonies, and I couldn't even get annoyed at the acoustic little solo. It's because it's not even really a solo. It's just some acoustic guitar picking. So yeah, I did enjoy this song, and it was a nice way to end. Fran?
Yeah, no, I've always been a fan of this song. What is interesting is that James was going to do this for himself. It wasn't even going to be a Metallica song. He was playing it on tour, and Ulrich heard him and said, "What's that?" And then he made him put that on the album. So I guess at the time he wouldn't have thought this would have fitted Metallica, to be fair. But yeah, no, I've always loved it. Also, I think Kirk isn't actually on the song either. It's just James playing the song. But I love the strings. I like Michael Kamen, and yeah, this was a track that I would always go to if I ever have to listen to Metallica. It will always be this one. I don't know if that's going to annoy the metal fans that I like the power ballads, but yeah, it's true. It's a good song.
I mean, I don't know what the metal to power ballad ratio is for Metallica, but surely if you're a Metallica fan, you've got to like a power ballad too.
Do like Slayer and Anthrax, did they ever do a song like this? Were they ever influenced by Metallica to go in that direction, or was it like, no?
From what I can, this is all a little bit like shallow skimming of like what I was reading, but I think from what I can tell, that actually part of the case for why Metallica are the sort of king of all like metal bands is because they did do this huge spread and range, and they've done like the really heavy stuff, but they also managed to achieve this commercial success, but they haven't like completely lost touch with their roots, if you're going to take the sort of pro Metallica take on it. So I think going back to that, like other big fights between the types of fans, as far as I can tell, people think this is a quality, you know, that they've been able to spread out and do that. So there you go.
Okay. So Fran, asking the question, do you think Metallica overrated?
It's unfair to ask me, because I think that if I was a proper metal fan and loved their 80s albums, then maybe so to me, Metallica is once they change direction, and the 90s Metallica, and I probably like half a dozen songs from the 90s. So they're not terrible. They're not Bon Jovi level in the 90s, but I wouldn't go and rush out and buy an album by Metallica. I'd be interested to see it in live. I think I would enjoy the spectacle of seeing Metallica, but I wouldn't say just underneath the overrated category. How's that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still going to say that they're overrated, because it definitely, Adam, your playlist made me reconsider, because it was a bit more varied than I thought it would be, and I thought Fuel was such an interesting part of Metallica that I didn't really know about. Rage Against the Machine, Red Hot Chili Peppers Metallica is much more my scene. But really, that I felt so cold watching them live. The spectacle was nothing for me. I felt like the staging was trying to make up for I was going to say lack of talent, which is quite harsh. It's not exactly that, but I didn't feel the soul in Metallica. And while I will definitely reconsider that they have more soul and have more sides to them, I think when you go and watch a band live, if they're good musicians and you don't feel very much, I think there's, unless I really go and sit down, and maybe that's what I need. Maybe I need to do a Chris. So one of our guests, Adam, he listened to all of Primal Scream's albums in a row to make his list. Maybe that's what I need to do and reconsider. But I think until I do that, for me, they're still overrated. And Adam, I imagine that, despite your experiences, you'll remain the same as well.
Yeah, I'm staying in the overrated category, definitely. And I don't envy anyone listening to Primal Scream's album all in a row over. They would definitely give me one of my choices, but it was taken already.
I think I do recommend listening to the episode, because that was a sort of opinion changing episode as well. But
I guess we should mention that Metallica, you've got to give them kudos, because they've been for a lot. They've had members. The best friend had been sacked, obviously Dave Mustaine. Then they lost the bassist to a car crash. They've had other bassists come and gone. They've gone through addictions and all sorts of trauma, and they are still going. So I guess you have to give them that as a positive for the band.
And as Adam said, they have a lot of fans for whom it clearly means a lot, but still there's an essence missing for me that I'm missing the Metallica gene. What can I say?
Let's close the chapter of Metallica.
It's an S-Pod thing, the podcast revisiting S Club 7's insane TV show.
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone's binge-watched this, anyone who's not on drugs.
Thank you for bringing this into my life. It was honestly truly appalling.
Guests helped me analyse the show in more detail than anyone ever asked for.
It feels weird to me to say the phrase sex object in a show that was aimed at 6-year-olds.
Do you think there's one of the problems with this show is that 7 is too much?
It's an S-Pod thing from Great Big Owl.
So Gods of Metal, eh? Yeah, I'm still not totally convinced by Metallica, even though they have a few songs. They are so big. But to be fair, I haven't seen Some Kind of Monster yet. And given that I'm now stuck at home because of COVID, I probably will do. So there's some positive there. We're now going to get into Adam's underrated pick, Grandaddy, who is a very interesting guy/band. We hope you think so too.
Underrated.
So, Adam, who have you picked as your underrated act today?
Okay, so underrated act. I am proposing Grandaddy, who I guess in contrast to Metallica, if we're sort of talking about their bombast and their sort of ostentatious appearance and reputation and sort of very taking themselves seriously and expecting to have the limelight. Grandaddy are super unassuming, I think, and I think partly for that reason have just flown a bit under the radar. I'm definitely in same as with Metallica, definitely not here to sort of say they've got no merit, no value, and I'm not necessarily here at all to say Grandaddy are my favorite band or like the best band. But I just think they've got enough about them, and especially when you get into some of the less well known stuff, although not all of it, they've just got like something that I don't think any other band quite has got, like a weird aesthetic and sort of DIY, really rough edged, raggedy, but like somehow anthemic and anti-anthemic at the same time. So I'm 39, and when I remember hearing Grandaddy first on the John Peel show, fairly late at night, on a scratchy old, hardly in tune radio, trying to listen really quietly when I was supposed to be asleep, basically. And hearing one song in particular was the first one I want to talk about, AM 180. But yeah, hearing that song, and then I didn't know what it was called or what the band was called. I was just like, what is this song? But I don't know how to find it. I mean, how did you find the song if you heard it and you didn't have any details about it? So I kind of hummed it, heard it again, think I heard the title, and eventually years later found it in a record shop in Bristol, and was, had a glorious sense of satisfaction. So I'm keen. I've got a lot of fond memories of them. I think they're really unassuming, underrated in that pure sense of like, they're not the best, but I just think they don't get a fair enough hearing for their qualities that they do have.
Yes, the youth of today will not know, that feeling of having to go into a record shop and hum something and see if they've got it. That's another story.
And working, sorry if you're into the bingo, and working in a record store, we love nothing more than people singing to us, because we all pretend we have no idea what you mean, and we have to get all the members of staff to listen to it first before we can decide on what the song is.
Yeah, and I used to work in a dance music record shop in Cardiff, and that was even more fun because there's often no words to sing at all. So people would come in looking for some new drum and bass tune and be like, you know the one that goes, you're like, well, no. Do you want to listen to this?
I remember, what year did what's called now?
AM 180.
Yeah, that'd be it. I think I was like college, and I remember that was a One Finger Cool song to play when I was 19 or 18 years old. I remember Grandaddy for 3 songs, and 2 of those are on your playlist. I won't mention those, but the other one was Crystal Lake, seemed to be always on the indie disco on people's mixed CDs, and and Grandaddy were kind of an oddball band in a way that I never knew who they were. I probably learned more about Grandaddy with researching this podcast than ever before. I don't remember them ever being interviewed or having a face with this band who would always have a quirky keyboard sound and grungy guitar sometimes, and so to me they were that band who had those three songs, and then suddenly they've been just vanished out of nowhere.
So Grandaddy, for me, one of those bands a bit like Steely Dan, where it's a name that I hear but I have absolutely no idea what it sounds like. And coming into this, if I'd had to guess what kind of music it was, maybe it's because we've recorded a lot of podcasts about this, or maybe it's the name, I don't know, but I would have said Heartland Rock Americana. And I was deeply pleasantly surprised to find out that it wasn't. And yeah, I didn't do too much research because I think I wanted to be guided by the music and hear you guys talk about it. But I was really surprised when on Wikipedia it said that they were initially influenced by Suicidal Tendencies and Bad Brains, because I can't really hear it, but I think what you say, Fran, about the keyboards and the grungy guitars is really interesting. And yeah, it was a very interesting playlist and band. And Yeah, clearly I'm just not as cool as you guys, listening to playing keyboard in the corner and going to the indie disco, because it completely passed me by.
You were doing what, 13 maybe? So
yeah.
You're into 5. That's fine.
Well, 97, I was 10, so yeah, very much into five.
That seems way too early. I swear they were like, maybe it took a while for it to sort of catch on. I reckon it's about 99 when I first discovered that song. But I wonder if it took a while for it sort of like get popular, because I swear I was like, in about 1999.
That's it. That happened in the past, didn't it? Where, especially if something wasn't from the UK, it was reliant on people having the record and playing it on the radio. So
and this is, I think this is the kind of John Peel anecdote. It just jumped out at me in the dark, in this quiet little room, pretending not to have the radio on, and it was like, what is that? But then, because it wasn't big and it wasn't everywhere, and it probably was about the same time the album came out, because he would have been on it straight away, it's like, where is this? Like, it's just something I've heard on the radio, but I have no way of finding out what it is. And that's just the strongest memory that I've got of trying to track down a song that I loved. But it later was Charlie Brooker's theme music for Screen Wipe. I guess that's sort of where it had its second life, and I think that's probably why it's at the top of the listening figures chart for them. But yeah, I don't know. Are we going on to
let's
talk about
get
it?
Into AM 180, which is your first pick. So yeah, I also didn't know that it would, because I haven't seen it. It's also in 28 Days Later, in 2002, which is 5 years after that. So there we go. But yeah, so Adam, I mean, I guess you've said it already. You picked this because it was the first song that you discovered by them, but I mean, yeah, it's a very interesting song, right? As well.
Yeah, it's such an interesting song. I think it's like a really unhinged pop song. It's sort of like got all the elements of Grandaddy that are good, but really condensed into in a parallel universe. This is what pop music sounds like. I think it's kind of got that like strange kind of weird synthy Toy Town piano kind of combined with that sort of slacker kind of almost grungy sort of heads down guitars, scuzzy guitars, and it's just I think it's really heartfelt. It's really euphoric in a strange kind of way, and some of the words, like it ends with, or there's a bit where it goes, we'll defuse bombs, walk marathons, take on whatever together, and the drums go and it comes back in, and it's just what a beautiful bit of like unhinged pop. I'm a big fan.
And do you agree, unhinged pop?
But I'm now thinking about maybe because of the second album being more popular, I heard it by people buying the first album after hearing the second album.
Yeah,
which would explain why. It was probably at the start of the decade on that when I knew it. But like Adam said, I agree with everything he said. That riff I've known for 20 odd years. It's kind of the era of, is it tree core a little bit sort of sound. I never knew what it's about, and reading a lot of his lyrics, I never really know what he's talking about. Jason's kind of have you seen him being interviewed?
No.
He really doesn't look comfortable to be a frontman at all, and he's like hiding. No. He's hiding under a cap the entire time, and
his big trucker's hat.
Yeah, and he's asking, "Is that right?" So I watched an interview, and he's going, "Shall I look at the camera now? Or do you want me to look at you?" And he's like, "Yeah," and that's like 2006. Like you've been doing this like 15 years, Jason. Surely you simply used to be interviewed by now.
Nice.
And his one thing he said was quite interesting. He said that he never really wanted to be in a band with other human beings. He was felt more comfortable being by himself. But when he met Aaron, the drummer, he thought, okay, I'll give it a try.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, how much of it is the Jason show? Because it seems he's just so prominent, and especially in some of the songs, they're quite sparse in the instrumentation that they have. So is he the main songwriter and the whole shebang, and other people come in and out, or is it a bit more collaborative?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is driven by him, definitely, and like the solo stuff that he's released since Grandaddy or alongside the end bits of Grandaddy have been good and have been kind of pretty similar, and it's obvious where the ideas have come from in some ways. And like recently they or he re-released Software Slump, but just him playing piano. So it really is pared back down to just him. Lots of it still works, like interestingly, even though that whole album is come to that maybe in a bit, but like that whole album is the deep concept of it is people and machines, and that millennial angst around technology, and that that everyone kind of jumped on for OK Computer, but is totally, this album, Software Slump has it right through the middle as well. So yeah, it's his show, I think. Yeah.
Have you ever heard any of the pre-debut album stuff? Because I know they had a lot of tapes and singles and things hanging around the 90s. Have you heard anything else?
Not that I can recall. I might have done a while ago, but no, I definitely don't own any of it. Although they sound like they would be cool and fun. Some tapes.
It probably is on YouTube now.
Yeah, because I knew that they like formed in '92, and the album came out maybe 6 years after they formed. They spent a while just doing gigs and recording stuff, but I don't know now if like people have found these and popped it on YouTube, or if they're completely hidden away still.
But yeah, so I didn't know AM 180 at all. Despite knowing Screenwipe, I just didn't watch Screenwipe enough clearly to make the association. Yeah, I really liked it. I thought it has this really woozy start, and then I think it's quite difficult to make something so woozy work so well with such a heavy and then distorted guitar later on. And I really enjoyed the refreshing difference to James Hetfield in his voice. He's very quiet. In this one, I'd say actually almost too quiet. I think could bump it up a little bit. Late in some other songs, it sounds a bit comes across a bit more clearly. And yeah, on what is it about, I wrote kooky feminist love song ? But the name refers to a gun as well, so yeah, who knows what's going on. It reminded me a little bit, I think I've talked about these guys before, The Research. Do either of you know them? So they're a band where it's literally, so it's one guy with a keyboard and then two women. I think one is a drummer, one is a bassist. It's very sparse, and it is also wonky pop, a bit like this. And I saw them live, and it really is kind of their three voices and their three instruments, and that's it. So I think it really made me think like, maybe The Research weren't as original as I thought they were, because I would pick them as one of the most underrated bands I've known. So yeah, that made me think like, definitely an influence.
You should do a podcast or something about like bands that you
underrated, right?
You think not got enough attention.
Yeah, I mean, Fran and I are constantly like, how can we talk about this band that we really want to talk about? Like, what's the big band that we have to put in? And that's why we had ABBA versus Kent, for example.
You mentioned Cheap Trick on the last podcast, and Jason's first ever concert was Cheap Trick, and they inspired him to want to be in a band. So maybe it's a hint that we should maybe do a Cheap Trick episode.
I'd be up for a Cheap Trick episode. I will also say that I'll bring in my Belgian card here. So there's a Belgian band called Girls in Hawaii, which I think absolutely you would like if you like Grandaddy, and they say that Grandaddy's 2003 set Epical Pop was paramount to their development as a band. So yeah, big influence.
I think I have heard of them.
Yeah, would recommend there. But yeah, when you said twee and twee core, I thought that's precisely what I was worried about, because that's not my kind of thing. But for this song and many others, it works. I'm not annoyed by it. It doesn't seem overly sincere. Yet.
I know what you mean. Like I know, I my ears pricked up to that as well. Like, is it? I was thinking it is. I mean, yeah, it is twee in some ways, but it somehow it doesn't have all the. It doesn't seem to fall into the same traps that a lot of that kind of music falls into. I think again, just because it is so lo-fi and it is so unassuming, and that sort of that charm just carries it through.
I felt wrong-footed every single song of this playlist, I have to say.
So that's good, isn't it? That's such a cool thing to do. That's a clever thing to do. Not me, the artist. Like, that's great. Like confounding you. That's good.
That's it. Because when I was like, they're not Heartland Rock, thank God, and then I was like, they're a little bit. It's a guy in a trucker hat with a keyboard. Where this could go either way. But yeah, what's your second pick from the playlist?
Okay, so I'm not even sure if I pronounced this right. Non-phenomenal lineage or lineage. I think it's probably lineage, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, again, I just think this album's great. Under the Great Western Freeway, and it's before Software Slump. Software Slump was the one that got much more attention, deservedly. Like, it's amazing, I think. But I don't know. I think they're just such unusual, oddball, unique kind of compositions, and it's kind of like a dreamy lullaby, but really scuzzy and not cheesy at all. And then there's a kind of lolloping beat that comes in, and the floor just kind of opens up to swallow you when it comes in. It's also a bit like the Succession theme song, if you've been watching Succession, where suddenly there's like lolloping bit and the elephant comes on screen and the opening credits. It's just a good moment. Yeah, I feel like it's a good Goosebumps kind of song, but again, so low key, so under the radar. It's almost like they're making music that it's almost kind of designed to not get your attention, but then when you do listen, you're like, right, yeah, it's amazing. So I don't know, this is why I went here for the underrated, because it feels like they're on a mission to sort of undersell themselves all the time, and then when you hear it, you're like, oh yeah, great.
I think I remember Grandaddy fans being really, really into Grandaddy. I think they were a band that people could fall in love with. Maybe if you're kind of like an outsider, they felt close to you. So like maybe like they are kind of the underdogs. I had never heard this before. I like the lyrics. It reminds me of my GCSE results. Oh, hello, good morning, sir. The results are back, and it's time to pack your things and go. It was pretty much what my parents said to me. The intro's odd, and then suddenly it kind of goes into a Flaming Lips vibe. It's got these heavy drums, and then it ends with these really pretty guitars. So yeah, it's constantly moving around, and I really enjoyed it. Babs?
So on first listen, I was like, ooh, I don't know about this. It's only his voice and an acoustic guitar. But again, there's these keyboards in the background. You think it's just his voice and a guitar, but they're these kind of menacing keyboards hinting at something to come. And then when it changes and when it goes into that instrumental section with the drums and the bass, it's quite magical. So I was like, hang on. I need to listen to it. And I think I had to listen to it 2 more times. And by the end, I did like it. But yeah, initially I was like, doesn't seem like my kind of thing, but I'm glad I pushed through. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Your next pick, Adam?
Yeah, magical is a good word. I think that's a consistent one. It does feel like they've got that quality of suddenly something changes and then they're into the next bit and you think, oh, hang on, how did they get here?
Yeah, indeed.
So the next track is Charts and Graphs. I think again, as soon as I say,
you think, it's difficult to know.
So this is from Software Slump, and Software Slump was easily their biggest album, and it was roughly at the same time as OK Computer, I think, sort of there or thereabouts, and it was definitely dealt with like similar kinds of themes, like very different album in lots of ways, but I think it also captured that millennial like weird technological angst that was only there and then kind of disappeared again. It was only there briefly and then it passed, and I think they did manage to bottle it up into something artistically amazing as well. And I think this album is not underrated. I think this album is rated. Like people do know that it's an amazing album. So I tried to go for a track that maybe was less, a bit more under the radar on this album. And I think it was more polished in lots of ways, I suppose, like this album, but I think this track is still really lo-fi and ragged, and it's kind of the robot falling to pieces versus punk toy piano getting trodden on. Good stuff, but just still managing to like create like some kind of driving song melody out of it. It's strange stuff, isn't it, that's somehow still like really possible to enjoy without it being abrasively sort of experimental.
I enjoyed this distorted craziness. He said in an interview that when the millennium was going to come along, he thought, what's the sound of the apocalypse? And then he thought, it will probably be a sigh. So this album is his sigh. It's like it won't be spectacular. It'd be like, oh, that's
not
over.
with a bang, whimper, not with a bang. Yeah,
exactly. So this is his soundtrack to the whimper, and I think it's another decent track. Again, I don't know what he is on about in the lyrics.
So I not knowing about millennial angst and machines, because he says I traded laughs for charts and graphs, I was like, oh, is it someone who's just like very nerdy and has dedicated his life to science or technology or whatever and is now regretting it? That's how I saw it, like too much time spent in front of an Excel spreadsheet, not enough time living. So it was, I guess would fit in here. Yeah, this was another one where I was like, ooh, the beginning, I'm not sure, but then I got into it. I thought it sounded very Pixies, more than any other track, but it's Pixies with a bit more of a melodic edge. And I wrote that I prefer the keyboard solo here to any Metallica guitar solo. Much more up my street. So yeah, once again, wrong-footed.
Adam, in that period, a lot of people were comparing them to the Flaming Lips because they both came out. Well, not came out. They both were out at the same. I think Soft Bulletin was kind of sort of the same era, and they were kind of a bit like cutesy keyboards and some distorted vocals and similar vocal style. So were you a Flaming Lips fan as well as Grandaddy, or?
Yeah, definitely at that time, like for sure, and loved the Soft Bulletin and thought it had. I think it does have a lot of the same characteristics. I think they obviously did go then in a direction that Grandaddy could not possibly have gone in, and like
especially
you will
live.
not see Jason Little. Yeah, you will not see Jason Little kind of like pissing about in a massive bubble. With loads of like boas around his neck or something. It's not going to happen, is it?
So what's your next track, Adam?
Okay, so now it's on. This is the album after Software Stomp, I think, and I don't know, like it got some attention, but maybe not as much as it possibly could have done. And I think by this point, like you kind of know what you're getting. Like it's got the same elements as the tracks that were good that came before it, but I think it's just a really good illustration of what they do really well. It's somehow still a little bit unassuming, chugging away, explodes into something quite glorious for the chorus, and then just settles down again. Yeah, it's happy as well. I think like it's a good happy song.
I loved this track when I was a 22-year-old. I think this is the biggest single. I think it got to number 23 in the charts.
Right.
It was on MTV a lot. I said that I think it's power pop. It's like Teenage Fan Club meets Dinosaur Jr. I love the sort of sound it has before the chorus, and I love the guitar sound. So I completely forgot about this. I was like, oh wow, yeah, it's it's that song. So yeah, I'm happy I rediscovered it. Thank you.
To completely disagree.
Oh no!
Oh wow, amazing.
Yeah, no. So I enjoyed the jarring beginning and what I called the Pet Shop Boys synths, because there's some synths that really like it's a sin or something like that. I thought this was precisely the kind of twee indie stuff that I don't like. I think this is the most accessible song, so it doesn't surprise me that it was the biggest hit. But I was like, yeah, this is what I thought all 5 tracks on this playlist might be like, and I'm glad they're not. I'm very sorry, but I much prefer the win. It's too happy for me, Adam. I'm afraid I'm a bit of a miserable git sometimes on this podcast, musically, and yeah, it doesn't do it for me. This one.
Oh no.
You'll like the final pick then.
Well, wait and see.
Maybe, but it certainly gets more miserable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 23. That's impressive. I think for that period of time in the charts.
Well, I guess 2003 indie music was on the rise, so I guess it would get airplay. I can't see it getting airplay at the moment. Yeah, I'm always surprised because they say they quit because of money. Like they said it wasn't financial feasible to be in a band in 2005. So that was like the peak of indie. So like they sold 80,000 records the second album. This isn't terrible, but maybe touring around the world they were seeing much return, and that's why they quit at that time.
What's interesting, so I looked up whether, again, it's Spotify, but on Spotify the city with the biggest listeners is London, and really? The next 4 are American cities. So I'm like, is it that they were actually bigger outside the US but not enough in a way that they could capitalize on it?
Well, V2 I think is also a UK label, so it makes sense. Maybe they weren't at all big in America.
But yeah, as Adam says, we're finishing on a contemplative note, let's say.
It is. I know it is. Yeah. It's a bit of a exactly like it's a bit of a bringing it all back down. But I mean, I just think it's just a really beautiful song. It's, I guess, in the context of the album and the themes that the album deals with, it's sort of like an ode to the healing, regenerative power of nature. It's away from all the machines and the decay, away from the noise, awake and be happy again. It's kind of like, it's a straightforward, it's him and the piano. There's none of the contrasting sort of juxtaposition of odd dynamics and aesthetics that's in some of the rest of the songs, and all that kind of brings in terms of painting a picture that is not what you expect, like we talked about with all the other songs going in a bit of a direction that you don't anticipate. It doesn't change really at all. It has a little twinkling in the background, and it has him a very plaintive ballad, but it's just really powerful, I think. And yeah, it sounds like exactly like feeling the way that he does under a weeping willow. It musically paints that picture, and I respect it for that.
They toured a lot with Elliott Smith, I think, around this time. I wonder if that was an influence. It's very understated. I love the beautiful sort of like rain piano sound in the background, and I think, like you said, I love the twinkly sadness to it all. It's I wasn't expecting this sort of track from Grandaddy. I did think they were a bit more of a kooky. I hate saying kooky, but So I'm surprised it had this much sort of depth to it, really. So we enjoyed it. Babs?
I will frame this and read you out my notes exactly. So when I saw that it was called Underneath the Whipping Willow, and having just listened to a song I didn't like, I thought, oh god, is this like elderly woman behind the counter in a small town, like the Pearl Jam song, where I see what's going to happen here, it's all going to be plaintive. And then my notes were, I like the urgent trilling, was not really on board with the quiet piano, but damn it, he won me over by the end. So fucking sincere, but I believed it. Basically, it
is sincere, exactly.
Yeah, but I absolutely believed it. I was just like, again, I think it goes back to non-phenomenal lineage, where it is, you think it's just his voice and an acoustic guitar, but there's something in the background here that, you called it the rainwater piano. Yeah, the trilling in the background, it really is jarring, and just the lyrics hit you. It's so simple, it's so sincere, but I believed it, and I enjoyed it. And this is really not my kind of music, not my kind of thing at all, but that's how good Jason is. I mean, respect.
Have you heard anything from the last album, like the comeback album at all, Adam? Like 2017, and
well, yeah, only kind of as part of trying to make sure that I was not missing anything for this. I mean, I don't know, like I definitely feel like I'm not saying that every single track and every single album deserves to be uplifted or has been overlooked. Like, I actually think this can be quite hit and miss in places, but I stand by by their ability to confound and to change what they're doing, and to that just that unassuming-ness that I think flows through all of it, and then almost because of that shirking the limelight and not wanting that attention and not wanting to be there, people are drawn to it. Some people are drawn to it, and then when he comes with a straight down the line plaintive song like that, you're kind of like, oh, okay. What, from you of all people, you're just going to give me a straight kind of piano take on this? It's sort of somehow all the more resonant.
Yeah, you mentioned about being on the wrong festival lineup. He said about near the end they were put on a German metal festival, and they got that and I thought, oh right. So he basically downed a bottle of wine, and they did a 6-minute jam which ended to nothing. And he said that he kept downing vodka and wine throughout the set, and ended with him collapsing onto his keyboard rack and falling to silence. And then they quickly walked away slowly, and that's when he knew it was the end of the band.
Oh wow!
Grandaddy.
Yeah, just like that. There it was.
So are Grandaddy underrated?
They are absolutely underrated. Given that I'd heard of them but never knowingly heard a song, and I am a self-proclaimed music fan. I can't believe it. And I think any band that gets me to like sincere twee things are absolute geniuses, and everyone should go and listen to them. So yeah, thank you, Adam, for bringing Grandaddy on today.
Yeah, it left me wanting to listen to more, to be fair. I don't know why I didn't buy the albums back in the day, because they're kind of my sort of music. Is the second album the best album, Adam? What is the best album?
I've lost track a bit of what order everything happens in, but like Under the Great Western Freeway is the early the 97 one. That's amazing, and then Software Slump after that, I guess. Yeah, are the two good ones. The ones I picked from, I suppose, mostly.
Yeah, because the Crystal Lake was always on my mixtapes
Yeah.
back in the day. So I'll probably give that another listen. So yeah, I would definitely say underrated. And thank you for reminding me of Grandaddy.
I feel like that's fully achieved the brief of like unearthing something and going, hey, look at this one. So I'm feeling happy about that.
Yeah, no, it's nice. It's nice when a guest brings on a band that they like and we don't hate it. That's for sure.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen very often. That doesn't happen. More often than not, we're debating with someone who likes a bigger band, and that can be a bit trickier. But no, thank you so much, Adam, for your picks today. And do you have anything to plug? I mean, I don't think you have a podcast, but I don't know, your work, your website, anything you want to talk about that you're doing at the moment that you think should get more visibility?
I mean, I can. Yeah, I've got a website. It's called adamcorner.uk. That's the address for it. You can see stuff I do on there. But I mean, I don't want to end with an advert. Let's bask in the glow of the unassuming. I mean, Jason Little and his friends.
Grandaddy's discography, if you like, as an alternate. Go and buy Grandaddy's albums.
But any other songs you'd like to mention?
The whole of that Under the Great Western Freeway album is fantastic, and it's so weird and lacking in its own confidence, but brilliant that everyone should go and give it some belated support, and then Jason Little can afford to buy a new broken piano broken on purpose for the sound.
So Jason Little does have a Bandcamp page, and it has albums including The Software Slump on a wooden piano.
Yeah,
exactly. So go.
It's the latest one.
Go and support him. And I see a Christmas song from 2009, so I'll be going to listen to that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few Christmas songs. It's into that that album, the low Christmas songs album. Like it's sort of on that tip. Nice. Strange Christmas songs for strange people in strange times.
And it seems that
relatable.
The one for this year is called "It Was a Silent Night," at least until Jeff Lynne arrived. So there we go.
Oh yeah, he's a massive ELO fan as well. Randomly, he said that he wanted Grandaddy to sound like ELO, but he failed.
Interesting.
I mean, that's quite a good description. Failed ELO. Well, yeah, the sound of ELO failing.
I mean, yeah, released on December 3rd, 2021. So yeah, you can. Let's all plug Grandaddy's discography then at the end. Thank you for listening, and thank you for coming on today, Adam.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
I mean, this won't come out until January, so happy New Year, Grandaddy, and all our
Happy New Year.
All our fans.
Yeah. Here's a great 2022 for all.
Oh, please. Thanks again for being a great guest, and thank you for letting me listen to some more Grandaddy. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers. Amazing. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for hanging around until the end. If you want to get in touch to agree or disagree with us, or maybe suggest some other bands or themes for us to talk about, we are at OU Music Pod on Twitter, at Overrated Music Pod on Instagram, and you can email us overratedmusicpod@gmail.com. May your homes be COVID-free, may your lives be as fulfilling as possible in a global pandemic, and see you next week. Bye.